All right. Hey, everybody. Thomas Vanderkin here from the Vanderkin Verse. Super excited today. We've got another tech verse. Today, back again with Beth, who joined us a few times. Beth. And also we've got Mark Pearson here with us. So want to introduce yourselves quick, guys?
Sure. Hi. Mark Pearson. So I'm the technical lead for the Lenovo Linux PC team. So here to answer any questions about Linux on our Lenovo PCs.
And Beth?
Yeah, hello, Beth Niddle here. I'm the Lenovo Pro Community Manager in North America in our business segment. So we've got a really cool community that we've had for, we're going to be celebrating our 1-year anniversary of the community being live at the end of this upcoming October. So we're very happy to be here and be able to connect and discuss all things technology, and today, especially Linux, which I'll let Thomas get into.
Yeah. So we're going to get deep into Linux, and as deep as people want to, with Mark. He is the Lenovo expert on how we actually do preloads on our ThinkPads and how that happens, the whole process. So we can cover just about any topic you guys want to about Linux and preloads. But I think to kick it off, let's talk a little bit about the community first. What kind of exciting things are happening there, Beth, and how that ties into why Mark's here today.
Absolutely. So the Lenovo Pro Community is kind of a cool place for Lenovo Pro customers, small business members, and kind of SMB size techies to kind of come in and have a place to connect, find special deals and giveaways, which we'll talk about in just a moment, from different articles and infographics and videos and really cool series that I'll also be talking a little bit about today called Learning Linux series with our in-house expert, Mark Pearson. I know you don't like to be called an expert, but it's true.
Feels like
So with the community, it's really cool. You can earn different badges and points. Like I mentioned, you can get access to giveaways. And my favorite part is being able to connect with other small business members, other Lenovo users, other IT professionals who are having the same kinds of conversations and facing the same challenges in your workplace that you most likely are as well. You can connect across industries. So it's just a really cool place. We'll definitely be sure to link to it.
Yeah. So many questions and answers. People are asking stuff about all types of products from Lenovo, all small, medium business owners. Really exciting place to participate. It's kind of gamified, win prizes, all that kind of stuff. So it's cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've got a ton of questions for you, Mark, and for you, Beth. But let's honor Gabriel here. He has a couple questions. It doesn't start out easy.
No, I was going to say we're right in at the deep end. Yeah, not too bad actually, but yeah, go for it.
First of all, thanks Gabriel for joining, and everybody else who's on. But I'll read it out for people who can't see. It says, one question today: the more important thing that we need is not only the Linux, is the RTX 3060 or better to use the best system to training AI models. And then a follow-up is, could you give me more details about if some Lenovo computers are using NVIDIA RTX graphics card?
So it's quite handy. I was actually on a call with NVIDIA about their data science call just this morning. I am not honestly 100% sure on the RTX 3060. I believe we have that in our workstations. I'd have to go double check and get back to you on that one. But we have a range of the NVIDIA cards, the RDX series and the new Ampere series. And we actually have a data science offering. And so we definitely test and do that. And on Linux, there's two options, but usually for the data science, you're using the NVIDIA closed source driver. But we also, just for those who are interested, we do work closely with the Red Hat engineers on the Nouveau open source driver as well. So I hope that answers your question, Gabriel.
I guess the bigger question is, Gabriel, are you able to find RTX 3060?
Yes, I was going to say that's the really hard bit. There are the shortages on the graphics side as well.
Yeah, they had a few of them at Best Buy here in Raleigh, where I live, and they had a line of like several hundred people outside the store camping out like it was Black Friday just to get those RTX 3060, 3070, 3080 cards. So
Wow. Yeah, it's in the community. One of the things that we're doing here with the Learning Linux series, we've got a really cool giveaway this month. So every month we give away something, and this month, very exciting, it's the X1 Yoga Gen 9. And originally we were going to have it with Linux, but we ran into, it's just a really long lead time. I don't know if any winner wants to wait 4 months for their
No.
custom ordered with Linux. So I totally understand.
Yeah. Actually, and maybe later we can cover some of the details why there's those differences. I know I sometimes get feedback. It's like, why is Linux slow? And it's actually not really Linux. If you order a custom bid Windows or custom bid Linux, it's the same. So this is not a Linux issue. There are lots of supply chain pieces.
So the winner this month gets a Lenovo Yoga, but it's going to come preloaded with Windows, and then they're going to be able to have the option to wipe it and put on a beautiful whatever distro they want of Linux, I guess, right?
Yeah. So all the work we do with Linux, it all goes upstream. For Linux fans, I would love you to buy our Linux preloads, but all the support we do goes upstream. So, and the reason we do that is so you can support any distro. For all the Linux fans out there, one of the joys of Linux is all the different flavors, and there's something that suits every need. So we have our key distros that we work very closely with Canonical and Ubuntu, and with Red Hat for Fedora and Red Hat Enterprise. But you should be able to take any distro and work with it. I run Debian on a number of my systems.
Really? Okay.
So yeah, if you buy Windows, as long as it's one of our Linux certified platforms, then it's not difficult to get Linux running on this. It should be easy. It's easy to try, check it works as you expect, and off you go.
I happen to have a Yoga. I think this is 3rd gen. So if you guys don't know what it is, it's this incredible laptop. Comes with a pen, in the storage compartment here, so it can flip around, turn into a tablet. And it seems very difficult if you're going to pick a product to load a distribution on to support something as complicated as this, I guess.
Oh no, that was funny. Funny enough, my wife's stolen my Yoga, and she's running Fedora on it right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
So no, the Yoga works well. It has
That's awesome.
no issues.
Well, let me ask kind of a basic beginner question here. So we might have some folks who are watching and maybe they've not heard about Linux before, or they're unfamiliar with the operating system options available, or there's just kind of what does it actually do? Can you give us kind of a basic foundation, like snapshot of kind of what people can expect if they haven't really dabbled too much into operating systems and Linux and the like?
Sure. Yeah. Funny enough, these are the slightly tougher ones to argue in some ways than the deep technical ones, because that's what I tend to focus on my day to day. But yeah, so Linux is an operating system, so same as Windows or OS X on the Apple side. It's Linux. So the big thing with Linux is it's free, and 2 versions are free. So it is free open source software. So it's created by a community of people who put it together. And it means all the source code is available for anybody to look at, and you can go take the source code for the operating system for the Linux kernel, build it yourself. You can change it if you wanted to, and you can do it. So everything is open. It's not sort of controlled by a single company, and that's important. So that means that there's a few things you get with it. There's no spyware. There's no advertising, there's no data collection. There's lots of studies showing there's very good security about it, because everything is out in the open. You don't get bugs that are hidden by obscurity. It's like you can see it. And there's also this ability to change it to suit what you need. So I know one of the things I personally love about Linux is just the variety of options and how you can do it. So did that?
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's cool to see and to hear about how like customizable it can be. The increase in security and privacy, those can be some really, so those are pretty big pluses to anybody who's diving into Linux.
Yeah.
What's the first of all, thank you again to everybody who's joined and watching online. I'd love to see you in the chat. Just put in, where you're watching from, just so we can get a sense of kind of where everybody's at. And Gabriel had some good follow-up. seems like he's interested in Lenovo. He's using competitors' PCs now, but I'm sure that Linux would work fantastic on his Lenovo too.
Yeah, and I did check. We definitely have the 3060 in some of our desktop workstations. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, so put in the chat where you're from, so where you're watching from, so we can get a sense of where everybody is.
Where are we all joining from?
Right. Oh, I'm here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So where are you, Beth?
I'm in the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
Oh,
area. I'm in Ottawa, Canada. So I hang out with moose and beavers.
Great.
Yes.
Okay.
UK, Birmingham.
Yeah. My brother went to university at Birmingham, so hey, there you go. My accent, in case anybody, my accent is English. I lived in England, so I lived a town called Newbury, just south of Oxford.
I'm worried I might lose some viewers from UK. I'm a huge Manchester United fan, even though I'm here in the US. So hopefully that doesn't throw off any UK followers. But
we shouldn't mention that I'm also a big Everton fan. So
I'm just staying quiet.
So for a lot of us on the PC side, I think on the server side, Linux has a huge portion of the server installation base. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's huge. I believe servers, and funny enough, Android phones, I think it's actually the most widely deployed operating system in the world, if you look at it from that point of view. But mostly people aren't aware it's there, right? The web is based on Linux. So yeah, on PCs, it's obviously a much smaller market, growing, which is good. And it is I mean, PCs are a unique challenge. There's the technology moves so fast on the PC world, and so I mean, with your yoga, but every year the new technology that's available on our laptops, it's a challenge, but it's fun.
I may or may not be right on this one, but did I hear that even Apple OS X is like based on BSD Linux or something like that?
Yes, yeah, originally, but
nothing left in it probably anymore. But
I mean, I don't know because I've never seen the source code for it. But
right.
I mean, if you go into it, and I don't play on OS X very much. But yeah, I mean, they have the shell on Apple is pretty good. So yes, my understanding is the same. I'm definitely not an expert on that.
Yeah.
Please don't ask me any Windows questions. I haven't got a clue.
Anybody who has technical questions, put it in there. But I've got another one too. Is it's a little bit intimidating to the idea of moving off of Windows. I've been on it for so long. Would you say it's similar to moving from like Internet Explorer to Chrome, or is it more complicated than moving?
Probably the biggest thing depends on which applications you use. That's big. So the hardest bit with moving from Windows to Linux is if you use a particular Windows application that just isn't available on Linux, and that can happen. And fortunately, it's getting easier and easier. Like more software companies are either supporting Linux, or what I'm finding is more and more applications available in the browser. So for my part, for work, I used to have to use Windows for Outlook and Teams, and I was kind of locked, and it was kind of frustrating. My job was working with Linux all day, but I still had to have this Windows just for that. I run on Linux all the time. The Outlook browser client is great. The Teams browser client is great. It does everything I need. And for me, the open source alternatives to Windows, there's open source alternatives to your Office suite. There's obviously browsers. There's thousands and thousands of open source applications. So it depends. Every now and then, my father-in-law is a really keen cyclist, and he wanted some particular Garmin application that didn't run. So that he's actually running Linux now, but for that he keeps his Windows PC just so he can do some sort of Garmin data process. There's a few cases that are still tricky, and there are ways around it. But can get complicated. But if you're looking at doing it, honestly, have a look at what you do on your computer. If it's browsing, Linux is a fantastic option. And one of the, I don't know, maybe I'm going too far sideways. One of the fun things is you can actually just try it, which is really cool. You can take a USB stick and you can go to one of the distribution sites. So, I mean, I recommend Ubuntu or Fedora starting places there, but there's all of the distros tend to have this live version, and they have instructions for putting it on a USB stick. You plug it into your system, and then on Lenovo, you press F12 to change the boot device, and you can change it to boot off that USB stick, and it'll boot to a Linux desktop. It will not change your hard drive at all. You can just try it. You try it and say, okay, you can check what works, play with it, see if you like it, and once you're confident, you can either install it as a dual boot with Windows, or what I tend to do is just install Linux. But it's got to the stage. I think the steps in the last 5 years have made Linux really very, from my point of view, I think it's user friendly. It would be an interesting one to ask your listeners if for experiences on that side of things.
Yeah.
It's not a super simple change. It's not quite as simple as a browser. It is different, but it's really not too frightening now either.
So just so I'm trying to make sure I heard what you said correctly. You're saying I could take this Yoga laptop and go to the Ubuntu website, download a USB key, reboot on the USB key, and it would run. It would just be running Linux.
So actually, yeah, that's my Ubuntu one. but yeah, that's what I quite often, because I'm switching between different flavors. But that's what I do. You plug it in, F12, choose a USB stick, and then, follow the instructions. Make sure you don't press the install to hard drive option if that's there. Some distros have that, but usually it boots to a live desktop, and you can launch your browser, you can install applications, and it's all running in memory. It's not touching your hard drive. Your hard drive's safe. Unless you went and did something really strange.
Wow.
But and you can try it out, and that's quite useful. This goes generally for your listeners. Obviously for our Lenovo Linux certified, that's great. You can be confident you're buying a system where Linux is going to work well and you're going to have support. But if you want to try it on a platform that doesn't, it's a great way to, maybe if you've got one of the beautiful things with Linux is on these old computers, which is no longer supported by Windows, but the hardware's still same. Put Linux on it, and your chances are, reasonable that it's going to work well, and you get some more life out of that old hardware. I probably shouldn't be saying this when trying to sell Lenovo hardware, but
well, you know what, Mark, you bring you've mentioned two things that I thought were really cool, because I think one of the things, if you're thinking about dipping your toes into Linux, the kind of play nice ability with your current systems, with your team, with your work environment, or even your personal browsing habits is kind of like, if you can't have Outlook or Teams or some of the common, workplace tools to be able to connect and collaborate on projects, that's going to be a challenging thing. But it's cool that you can still access some of those Microsoft or other tools via web browser, even if you are using Linux on your desktop.
Yep, no, totally.
Yeah.
And video conferencing, it used to be a real pain, but I'd never used this platform before, and just worked right out of the box. I didn't have to do anything special.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I also love how it's so sampleable. It's not, because I think depending on your tech level, it can be a pretty intimidating thing to even just try and put it on something like this and try it out. But it seems like there are options, especially with some of the the applications with Ubuntu or Fedora, that you can kind of plug right into, and it's a little bit easier to make the leap or try something new.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of funny. New Linux users quite often go through this phase of they try their first version and like it was like, oh, I wish it did this, and then there'll be a different flavor. So it's quite common for Linux users to go through a whole bunch of trying to find the version that fits exactly their needs. But I think that's a good thing.
Sure. I've got a whole list of questions here. Do you want, I know that you're going to, since you're the preload guy, you were going to show us a quick sample of the website maybe and all the preloads that are available. Is this a good time for that?
Yeah, I can pull that up. So share screen.
I just think it's pretty impressive at all the work. I think ThinkPads in general, probably back to our IBM days, have been pretty well known for our ability to support Linux, right? So
yeah, no, and Lenovo has a good reputation. It's nice that we have the official program. Let me just skim through that, and I'll come back to that point just as to why the Linux certification program is important. But yeah, we have a website, and I wonder if I can put it in the chat. Can I put things in the chat? I'm not sure.
Should be down the bottom right corner.
Yeah. No, I can only read. I can't place. I'll figure that out in a bit. But anyway, we do have this Linux laptops, desktops. It's called a dynamic landing page, but it pulls out all the current Linux offerings that we have, and I think right now we're up to 31. So there's a whole bunch of them. A lot of them are last year's. This year's platforms are still coming out, but the S1 Carbon 9's on there. Where's the somewhere? The P620 is an awesome machine. I want one, but I don't have one. But
all these are. This is the list of all the Lenovo products that ship with a Linux preload. Is that right?
Not quite. Actually, no. It's just a small subset. So we do roughly. It's around 30 platforms a year. These are the ones that we've got online, and we don't get all of them online. Partly this year because some of the challenges around supply and just that side of things. So yeah, this is just a subset. Our actual program is bigger, and we have more devices, and there tends to be a lag. But yeah, we have a lot. Maybe I should go through how the platforms we do. So we do on the workstation, we do full config, which is kind of cool, and it was a big step for the workstation team. So that should mean that any of the workstation platforms, so they're the P series, both mobile workstation and desktop workstation, it's full config. All the different configuration options are supported. And if you've ever looked at some of the like the P520C, all the different options with graphics cards and drives and memory and network cards, and it's such range, but they are all with very few caveats supported on Linux, which is cool. And I have to give credit to our Linux partners as well, with Canonical and Red Hat, who we work with for how much they help with that. So that's awesome. Then we have on the ThinkPad side of things, we do most platforms. There are a couple we don't do. We don't do the Fold and the detachable. Though actually I hear good things about the detachable working. The Fold definitely doesn't work well with Linux.
Got the Fold right here.
Yeah, I played it. It's got an interesting Intel Lakefield
Start working on it
there, and yeah, there's definitely issues with that one. That one was not Linux ready. But the vast majority of the ThinkPad portfolio is covered Intel and AMD, and so that's exciting. And that's good. And then we have a bunch of the Think Centers. I don't know that portfolio as well myself, but we do a bunch of the portfolio of the Think Centers with the desktops there. And we're doing more with SMB, and I can't say a lot because I'm not allowed to talk about future platforms, but we are doing more with the SMB segment, which is good. So
that's really exciting.
Yeah, that's my area.
That's like, patient.
Yeah, and no, just recently the other one which we've had is the Edge products. We just released on the SE30 and SE50. So that for us, that one's fascinating because that is, from a market share point of view, it's completely different. That is Linux dominates, and it's like yes. But, anyway, so yeah, no, we're in a lot of places. The web sales is still gathering. It's slowly. It's been a lot of work to get the web sales going.
Now, Mark, you've mentioned which platforms are supported. So I'm going to go ahead and ask another kind of basic question for anybody who's not maybe as familiar. What is the difference between a distro and a platform when we're talking about Linux here?
Okay, so the platform's the hardware. So I'm on a P1 Gen 3. We've got the X1. So that's the platform. The distro is Linux. It's kind of funny. Linux in theory is just kernel, which is the core layer that all the software runs on. Yes, the core layer that all the applications you use all run on top of the kernel, and that lets it talk to the hardware. But we tend to refer to Linux as the whole ecosystem, so it covers the kernel and then all of the these user space applications, of which there are tens of thousands. And then what happens is the distros or distributions, they are different ways of packaging it. So if you take, so Ubuntu will package things differently to, say, Fedora. They will have a different take on it. They might use a different set of applications. They might use a different graphics manager. They will have different ways of display, a different user interface. There tends to be a lot of the distros really have different user interfaces and ways of a lot of them focus on the usability. So yeah, the distros all basically around the packaging and the use and the look and feel of it. So, and that can be very different. I have seen Linux distros that have been designed to look exactly like Windows. Kind of weird, but you can do it, and it looks just like Windows. The start button is there. It's like I'm not quite sure how they get away with that, but anyway. So
but like you mentioned, when people, with first-time Linux users, when they're popping in and maybe they're trying a lot of the different distros, it's fun to get kind of the look and feel, and that can be nice for someone who's transitioning.
Yeah, and I mean, there's pluses and minuses. It's a little bit you get spoiled for choice, and there's so many different variants. It can be a little bit daunting sometimes with how much choice you have. The nice thing is if you try something you're like, no, I really hate that. That doesn't work for me. There's going to be another version. You can change it for something that does it, and it's not pushed on you, so to speak. You choose.
So Mockmore had a comment in that it was interesting to me. He said Zorin OS 16 is a good Linux. So my question is that one of the ones that we can ship preloaded from the factory with Zorin? And if not, then is there an advantage to buying a Linux PC that is preloaded with whatever we do support and then switching it? Is it you better off buying a Linux one instead of a Windows one then, I guess?
Oh, that's a good question. So no, Zorin, we don't have a preload. Honestly, if we did preloads for all of them, it would be crazy. There are dozens and dozens of different ways. So I haven't run Zorin myself. I've seen the reviews for it. It's a beautiful distro and very well put together. I haven't run it myself. So no, for preloads we have Ubuntu on all of our Linux certified portfolio, and then we have Fedora on a few of them. We don't do Fedoras on as many. So various reasons, but and our Fedora program is expanding. And we do Red Hat Enterprise certification, but we don't have a preload for that. Just that tends to be more targeted at the enterprise one. It's not necessarily something that we've seen a need for online. And yeah, essentially you can't put all of them on. There's quite a lot of work that goes into doing these releases. There's quite a lot of testing work. We have to work very closely to, if you find issues, to work with community. So it's, I've seen this before. It's like, oh, just do this. It's like we have quite strict quality controls, so we can't just do everything. So so that's why there isn't everything. It would be lovely, but it's just not realistic. But you are quite right. If you buy one of our Linux preloaded systems, then Linux is going to run on it, and the chances are very high that it will work well. The only caveat is that our fixes go upstream. So we might have fix for for a fingerprint reader. Actually, that's a bad example. We might have fixed because fingerprint readers firmware. Might have fixed for graphics driver. So you've got the latest OLED panel, and it needs a fix to make it work, and that has gone upstream, and it is in the Linus's mainstream Linux kernel. The problem is there's a delay with when a different distribution might pull it down into their version, and so we work with Ubuntu and Fedora. They pull the fixes that we need on our platforms down sooner. I don't know what Zorin's process is for doing kernel upgrades, but it might mean if you brought the very latest hardware, they might not have those fixes available, and you might have to wait 1 month to 6 months for them to pull those in and make them available. So that's the caveat. Generally, having the very latest cutting edge hardware is the hardest to get going, but give it a bit of time. Give it a bit of time, and all of the distros work. Was that a long
So-
answer to a simple question?
No. Is it? This might be unfair too. Is it any cheaper to buy the Linux version of a laptop over the Windows one?
Yes, it is. No, it is cheaper. So if you compare it, it depends on the platform. I don't get a say. I should caveat, I don't get a say in the pricing at all.
Right.
It's completely out of my control. But yes, Linux is generally cheaper. It's always cheaper. I will mention, so one thing, the Linux is only available on the configure to order systems. We don't have ready to ship. So ready to ship means there's a stack of units sat in a warehouse ready to go. And we don't have that available for Linux. Many reasons, but largely because it's really hard to gauge what the demand is for it. And so they haven't, the geography selling it haven't quite taken the risk of pre-ordering that many units. But so if you are comparing prices on a system, make sure you compare Windows config to order and Linux config to order. If you compare ready to ship, it doesn't compare the same because it's just different.
Right.
They've got a platform sitting there that they need to get out the door.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I get that question sometimes. People saying, "It's not fair." It's like, well, it's not the same system. Yeah.
Oh, so looks like Mahmoud is a daily user of Linux, just like you.
Excellent.
So
yeah. And so Beth, actually, so Thomas, I don't know how much your Linux experience is, but so just to explain, KDE, there's different desktop environments. So the ones we primarily ship with is GNOME or GNOME, but I think generally pronounced GNOME. But there are other desktops, and again, it's all about the usability and the interface. So KDE is the other very big popular one. So Mac Moore, just I've spoken and worked with the KDE community. They have an amazing product. We don't ship with the KDE in any of our preloads because we take Ubuntu and Fedora and we don't modify it. And I think that's an important point. We don't add any Lenovo extra to it other than documents. We put a user guide in there. We have an agreement with Canonical and Fedora to put our user guides in it, but we don't make changes to it. So when you get our preload, it's the same as you would get from the Fedora community without any Lenovo stuff added in. And that means because they by default have GNOME, that's what we use rather than KDE. But yeah, KDE works well, and they've got an amazing community. So and they do some really interesting work.
Don't you have to add the Lenovo drivers to the standard preload though to make it work?
No, so that's one of the nice things is everything's upstream. Everything's part of the kernel, so there's no having to go and hunt down different drivers. It's all there.
That blows my mind because I don't even know if you knew this, but for 8 years I was part of the team in IBM and then Lenovo. So from 1998 to like 2008, 2006, they created the preloads that go on the Lenovo ThinkPads. So Windows, but drivers was like that's what kept me and like 100 other people employed was just figuring out these drivers that go on the preload.
It is complicated, and realistically, it's a challenge for the Linux program because we work with the hardware vendors, and they need to get their drivers upstream into the Linux kernel, and that means developing it and reviewing it. And the kernel community review process is very rigorous. I've contributed, and some of my best code has been after review from kernel maintainers. You write something, you think it's good, and then once you've had the community pick it apart, what you get at the end is way better. So I can personally attest for the Linux quality because I've been put through that ringer and it's awesome. But yeah, so our hardware vendors need to get upstream, and obviously for Intel and AMD and the big guys, that's norm. But it has downsides with component shortages. We've had some Wi-Fi chip changes, and so we've had to work with the Wi-Fi vendors to get their driver in, and it does mean our Linux release sometimes lags. But the nice thing is you update your kernel, everything's there, and you don't have to go hunting down. So, I mean, there are cases when if you wanted it earlier, you might go get it directly from a different repository. But on our preload, everything is upstream, and I think that's important. so that you're not tied.
Yep. So just a reminder, everybody who's joining, we'd love to hear where you're from. So keep checking in. Let us know where you're listening from. I see AJ joined, but if you want to check in, let us know where you are, AJ. I know you're a big fan of the Vanderconverse, so I appreciate everything you do to support it. Beth, you want to give another commercial for your Lenovo community? It's been a few minutes. Maybe we got a
commercial break. Thanks everyone for joining us. Make sure you grab your popcorn. So the Lenovo Pro Community, a really neat place where small business owners and just techie users and anyone under that 250 employee mark within the SMB can join. We have a business program specifically for our small business users, where you can get discounts on products, early access to sales, access to the Lenovo Pro Community, and My Lenovo Rewards, which is really cool. So we've got Mark's expertise in the community every month with the Learning Linux series and tips, which is really cool. And
get in there
and check it out. We'll put the link somewhere for everyone, maybe down below.
Yeah, learn with Mark, exactly. Next question I have is, you kind of hinted at it in your last comment, was how there's a give and take, I guess, in the Linux community. Nobody really owns it. So what is Lenovo's, what if anything are you contributing back to the Linux community as you get this software from them?
Yeah. So I mean, for a lot of it comes from the partners, Canonical, Red Hat, and others that we work with. A lot of our so Canonical particularly does our hardware enablement, but we work closely with Red Hat engineers, and any issues fixed on our platforms go upstream. So just that in itself, it's interesting. It helps all vendors realistically, and I'm sure there's things other vendors do that help us, and that's good. That's how the community works. But more directly for the team, we have contributed some pieces. So we did recently had accepted platform profile driver. So you probably know it on Windows, but you have the different platform performance modes, the high, balanced, and
it's
low.
a slider in the battery for us.
Exactly. So contributed now, but it was interesting. So we've got that now in the Linux kernel that's been accepted, and the ability to move between the modes. But it was interesting because it's not Lenovo specific. So first version went in, and they came back and said no. So we have a new platform profile driver, and it's kind of cool. So we obviously use it, but I know Microsoft use it. I believe HP do. There's other vendors all using this interface to do it. And the GUI bit is still being implemented. The GUI bit is not available yet, but it's coming out soon. So anyway, we have that. We have ThinkLMI. So probably, actually, for the SMB community, this might be interesting. If you want to tweak your BIOS settings, if you want to change your BIOS settings, you can do that basically from Linux. There's a firmware attributes class, and so ThinkLMI that lets you go and change your BIOS settings with appropriate security pieces and all that. So that driver's gone in, and then we've had a few small fixes. We're looking at doing more. It's always interesting because you're working with the community, so you need to make sure you do things the right way. That you can't do things that are just for you. You need to make sure that it fits in with who's doing it. Yep. So we are contributing directly and
Great. So there's some Lenovo programmers writing some code, and then you send it off to Linus Trevolis or whatever his name is, and he approves it.
Ultimately, I don't think he's reviewed any of my code personally. So the way the kernel does is there's a heap of maintainers, amazing people, and so you're contributing to a little subsystem, and so you send up your proposed change, and they review it. Anybody can review it, and then once it's accepted, it goes from their little subsystem, and it makes it up eventually into Linus's tree.
Okay.
It's quite the process. It was I know it was, from my point of view, it was very interesting. I'd worked with Linux for many years and never contributed, which is quite common. And so it's been a lot of fun and really sort of enriching to just contribute back and learn the process. So community is important, right, Beth?
Yeah. Community is important. I had a quick question about kind of with the customizations and kind of this open source community aspect. So if you're a Lenovo user and you want to make tweaks to your own distro on your own laptop once you get it, because it's customizable, that's kind of one of the cool
Yep.
things. Is there a process where you have to kind of submit the changes you make, or is that just something you can do yourself because
No,
it's your own
you can
hardware?
totally do it. No, you develop on your own and you make changes. You don't have to contribute those back at all if you don't want to. But if you wanted other people to take advantage of it, then you should.
Okay, cool. So it's probably more strongly suggested that you have kind of a basic knowledge of coding and developing in general
Yeah.
if you want to kind of dive into this.
Yeah, no, in all fairness, it's quite the learning curve to get started. There's tons of guides out there to help you, but yes, no, I mean for the actual, especially the Linux kernel, if you're programming in there, you need to have decent
That's good, and that's good to know.
skills.
It's that's the kind of general barrier to entry for kind of the common Joe or Jane who'd like to try something like this, like me.
And it's funny because I mean I was at the Debian conference last week, and I work with the Fedora community quite a bit too. But there are just as a note, they're always looking for not non-techie people who can help with testing, people who do UI verification, documentation. It's kind of cool. It just, I mean, from my, with a Linux hat on less than a Lenovo hat, but there's if that appeals, there's something for everybody.
That's cool.
That is cool. Well, I'm proud to be here in Raleigh. It's a bit of a Linux hotbed. We've got obviously Red Hat headquartered here, now owned by IBM, and Epic Games and SAS and all these other.
Oh, I didn't realize Epic was in Raleigh.
Epic is headquartered. Yeah, so we've got a bit of a hotbed of Linux community, very vibrant here, and it is sort of once you get involved, it's like a club, right? When you're in the Linux, kind of like wave at people going down the road if they have Linux stickers or whatever.
Yeah, no, I did a presentation at the Trilug, the Triangle Linux Users Group.
Yeah,
about it, and they're, I mean, very active Linux users group. So it's neat. It's
there's all these other people.
Communities.
Yeah, all this. There's so much camaraderie and support within the community of users.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I usually like to keep these chats. I feel like we could keep going. I still have a list of topics I could cover with you to around 45 minutes. But is there anything else, Beth or Mark, that you guys want to point out, hit, or talk about before we kind of wrap it up?
So from my point of view, I'm always happy to take questions about Linux. I have welcome to send them to me. I mean, I'll keep an eye on this afterwards to see if there's questions on your channel, Thomas.
Okay.
But if there's any questions, you can Mark Pearson at Lenovo.com. You're welcome to hit me up.
Mark Pearson.
It is a busy email account, but
okay.
I'm always happy to take questions. And
wow.
Yeah. So.
Are you going to give us your phone number and social security?
Sure.
I guess you don't have that in Canada. I don't know what you have, but there's probably some number up there. So
yeah, some number. Yeah, good. Yeah. I'll keep that one to one side.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Mark and Thomas and Lenovo and the community, the SMB community, for kind of allowing this to happen in this great conversation here. I also wanted to say, if you're interested in joining the community or finding out more, we've got we'll share some links, and we're also giving away the ThinkPad Yoga X1 Yoga Gen 6 this month in community. So if you join the community and then tell us about your preferred operating system and why you like it, you can be entered for a chance to win. So we're very happy to be talking about Linux as an operating system today, and definitely want to hear your thoughts. And you can also find Mark there if you want to message him or find him on the board. So, and me too.
Everybody should go join the community, and then you can keep the conversation going with Mark and Beth on the community too.
Yeah.
Lenovo Pro. Yeah. Well, I think that's it. Thank you, guys. I loved having you on the Vanderconverse. Really helpful, and I think we got a lot of interaction, a lot of people watching, so it's great. We'll keep it going on the Lenovo Community Pro Store.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.